I learnt later that the person who had challenged Hatayogi Pret Baba was Durjata Agori. I had heard a lot about him. I had heard that he could create a new world. I had read in the Puranas, ancient Hindu scriptures, that dissatisfied with Brahma's creation, Vishwamitra began creating another universe, causing much alarm and agitation among the Devas, gods. Vishwamitra stopped the creation when the Devas and the Rishis protested. I had entertained a hope of seeing this giant-like personality someday, and that day when I did see him, I was indeed awe-struck. There were a few others there who knew how to use Kritya. Mentionable among them are Trijata Agori and Dehur Baba, but they remained calm throughout. One feared that the convention would really not be seen through, as the inauguration itself presented so many problems. It was like weighing frogs on a scale. It was indeed difficult to satisfy their ego, as each one of them was distinguished in his own area and each one had a giant-size ego. No one was likely to give in. No one was willing to accept another as his superior. In all that uproar, 2 or 3 names were proposed, but some opposed them so strongly that they could not even be discussed. One of the suggestions was not to have a chairman at all, that each one should look upon himself as the chairman and we would go ahead with the proceedings. But this was opposed too. It was argued that the meeting would be chaotic without someone in the chair to guide and control it. Each one then would have his own way without paying any attention to what others said. No one could be restrained. To keep decorum and order, it was essential to have a chairman. Some even argued that if no agreement could be reached on the question of the chairman, how could the participants get along together on other matters and work amicably? It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Realizing that it was time for the afternoon sadhana, Burbua Baba said that as some sadhakas performed sadhana regularly, the session would be adjourned for the time being. He suggested that the matter could be taken up again when they reassembled at 4. The chairman could be elected then. He suggested that if they did not come to an agreement, a contest could be held, and the one who came forward and proved himself to be superior to the rest would be the chairman. With this suggestion from Burbua Baba, the session came to a close amidst tumultuous noise. I was sad, and I wondered how the superiority of one person over the others could be established when they had specialized in different areas. A contest is possible if it is only in one common area. An expert tantric is not necessarily a master of mantra, or if a person is a master of both tantra and mantra, it is not possible for him to be a master of Gauraksha sadhana and Agor sadhana too. These sadhanas are the opposite of each other, and each is troublesome in itself. Therefore, it is very rare for one person to be the master of all. Although there is nothing impossible on this earth, from the way challenges were thrown out in the morning session and the immediate withdrawal of the adversary thereafter, it was clear that, if not impossible, it would be certainly extremely difficult to find one person who was an expert in all areas. Even after the session, the participants were agitated, and some tantrics and practitioners of leftist methods looked very angry because they thought that when they were present, no one else was qualified to take the chair. They also said, without mincing their words, that if anyone was imposed as a chairman, they would not hesitate using any kind of kritya against him. He would then have either to protect himself from it or die. There was no third way. This question generated a good deal of heat and aroused the participants' temper. During the afternoon break, the journalist in me became curious. I asked some of the participants if, in their opinion, there was indeed someone who could unquestionably be said to be the ablest of all. No one was clear in his mind, but they were sure of one thing: anyone who was finally selected to take the chair would have to go through tough tests. It was also clear that the chairman would have to be a master of all subjects. It was not unlikely that someone might even lose his life during the discussion. When I questioned Burbua Baba, I found him calm. He said all this was natural in an assembly of this kind. He said that each one of those present was unique in his own way, in his own subject, and would never allow anyone else to claim supremacy. But he said, I am confident that the question of selecting the chairman would be resolved in the afternoon session. I did not want to lose this opportunity of meeting the maximum number of Hatha Yogis and Tantrics and get their views. Everyone I met seemed special, no one inferior to another in any way. The evening session started at 4 o'clock. There was tension and anxiety on every face, and each of those present seemed anxious to prove his own greatness. Burbua Baba began by expressing his regret at having failed to come to an agreement on the question of the chairman in the morning session. This is natural, he said, since this is not only an assembly of tantrics, but there were masters of other subjects too. Such violent difference of opinion is only natural. He appealed to the audience to reach an agreement and work out a procedure which would ensure the selection of the chairman in a proper manner. He also suggested a procedure. Some distinguished participant could suggest the name of a person who was an all-rounder. If anyone has such a person in mind, he should come forward and propose his name. Everyone was free to give his opinion and challenge the person whose name is proposed. But if he does not accept the challenge, no such experiment should be carried against him that may lead to unpleasant consequences. Soon after Burbua Baba finished talking and went back to his seat, several persons got up and suggested names, but the din and noise made it impossible to hear a word. At that moment, Trijata Agori stood up and roared, commanding people to be silent. His voice was thunderous, like the explosion of a bomb. All other voices were drowned in his voice, and there was a sudden silence in his assembly.